excited to be here. And so this is the title of the presentation is College is for You. It's pretty straightforward, something I definitely believe. And as was mentioned, my name's Professor Gonzalez. Most of my students call me Dr. G for short, so you all can call me that if you like. And I am from Fullerton College. I teach ethnic studies there. How many of you have heard of ethnic studies before? Okay, like 3 people. Yes, and we're going to talk about why that is. Why have most of us not been exposed to ethnic studies? This is a really important field within higher education, and actually now starting to be seen more at the high school level. But it's definitely something that has been around for a long time. Well, not compared to some of the traditional disciplines, but for a few decades now. And so I want to go into a little bit about where did ethnic studies come from? What does it mean? And then how do we teach it? How do I teach it in particular? So you can kind of get an idea of what to expect once I see you at Fullerton College, because I have a feeling like I'm going to see a lot of you, maybe in the summer or in the fall. Okay, cool. Okay, so this is the agenda. This is a pretty short time we have together, but I wanted to give you kind of a snapshot of what to expect. So in the next 45 minutes or so, these are the things that we're going to do. We're going to get to know one another. If you ever take a class with me, and do a lot of community building, a lot of small group and partner discussion, and we really get into the material. So it's also a different way of learning when you get to know your peers and you're really invested in what they're learning, how they're contributing, and then what you bring to the table. So we're going to do a little bit of that today. We're also going to talk about the way our society is and how it came to be, which, as you all know, if you watch the news or walk outside your door, you know there's a lot going on nowadays, right? We're going to learn about some activists of color in U.S. history. These are stories that are often left out of mainstream media discussions by the government or media presentations. We usually only see negative depictions, and so we're going to talk about some positives and people who worked for social change. We're also going to think about envisioning the society that we want. So we're not just going to think about everything that's wrong. We're going to think about what's right, who's done what's right throughout history, and then what can we do to contribute to that. And then learn about how all of this connects to ethnic studies, which is my field, and then why you should major in it, because of course I'm here to recruit all of you into it in college. And if not major in it, at least take 1 class or 2 classes. They fulfill a bunch of different requirements, and so most students come into our classes kind of just wanting to check off boxes, right? Oh, this is a transferable course, this meets the history requirement, and then they fall in love, which is kind of what happened with me. I was like, okay, yeah, this class sounds cool, let me take it. And then I've been studying it for the past 15 years, so hopefully we can snag some of y'all into the major. Okay, so I wanted to talk about myself just a little bit to give you some context for why I'm here, why I'm really excited to be here, and how I got into ethnic studies. So this is a picture of me on the left, freshman in high school. And then this is a picture of me graduating with my PhD in 2015. And basically from this time to that time was all a struggle with school. I loved to learn, but I hated school. You're like, but you went to school on purpose for a really long time. Why would you continue your education? So, you know, as most of you, I had gone through a lot of struggles growing up, and I had a really hesitant time with school, I'll say. I rebelled a lot. I ditched a lot. But I always did well. I managed to do well because I loved to learn. And so fast forward my senior year in high school, I'm like, I'm not going to college for what? I need to work and help support my mom, my single mom. So I didn't take my SATs. I didn't think I was going to go to college. And then after a couple of years of working, I realized, you know, I really love to learn. Let me go see, you know, college is supposed to be what you want to study. Nobody's telling you what you need to study. Let me give it a shot. So I take my first ethnic studies class thinking, okay, I just want to meet a requirement. Well, I ended up really falling in love with the content, but sort of accidentally fell into it as a major because as most of you will probably go through, I changed my major like 5 times. because I loved every topic that I was studying. And then I don't know where it clicked, but something about the content, maybe something I'll share with you today, just really resonated with me, and I saw the importance of studying ethnic studies. And so I ended up going to a community college. I transferred, and then thought I was going to be a lawyer and didn't get into law school. That's kind of important if you want to be a lawyer, right? And so I was like, okay, let me change my path again. So I've definitely faced a lot of ups and downs, changes in direction of what I thought I wanted to do versus what I actually did. All of that to say that I ended up here, in ethnic studies at Fullerton College, and actually here in front of you for a reason. I believe every person we encounter in our life is for a purpose. Sometimes not so good, sometimes good, right? But they're all learning opportunities. And so for me, I just wanted to share, I feel like, I went through some things, and if you find your passion and you love what you're studying, I feel like it makes it so much easier and such a better experience in college. Because I was like, well, if I would have been studying this when I was younger, I probably would have been much more engaged in school. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. Okay, so in ethnic studies, we study history. We're not just a history-based discipline, but in order to know where you're at, you have to know where you came from, right? And that's in terms of yourself, in terms of society. And so I talk a lot about the importance of history and the importance of understanding a really dynamic, diverse, complex history. And so can somebody read this quote for me? In your best dramatic outdoor voice.
People without knowledge is a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Marcus Gargaro.
Yes. So a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and cultures is like a tree without roots. Marcus Garvey. What does this mean to y'all? Can somebody translate that, or what about this stands out? And these are a couple of my favorite quotes I'm going to put up here. What does it mean to be a tree without roots? And this is how we are in my class. Yeah, so you need support, right? Roots support us. What else? If the root's not there, they won't live. Roots are life-giving, right? Yeah, what else? So one more person. What's the importance of roots? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like almost you don't fully exist, right, without your roots. Yeah, good. Okay, another one of my, so all of these folks that you're seeing, the authors, what I would say is write their names down, just because we don't have enough time to go into their bios. These are all really interesting, important historical actors in the U.S. The second one, this is one of my favorite authors, James Baldwin, says, American history is longer, larger, more various, more beautiful, and more terrible than anything anyone has ever said about it. Okay, so our history is complex, and we don't talk about it in its complexity, right? Our history is beautiful, and it's terrible, and we need to know all sides of it, and that's really what we do in ethnic studies, is look at history from this really complex perspective. Maya Angelou says, wouldn't it be wonderful when Black history and Native American history and Jewish history and all of U.S. history is taught from one book, just U.S. history, right? So ethnic studies, we're kind of relegated to do our own thing right now, and this is really what we do. So in ethnic studies, we look at this complex history of all of the political actors within our society. So not just from the perspective of dominant culture, we're looking at all of these diverse groups and how we've participated in the making of this country for better and for worse, right? How many of you have read anything or heard anything by Maya Angelou? Yeah, she's a pretty popular author. I would say write her name down if you have not. There's some really good videos of her reciting her poetry on YouTube. Okay, Haile Selassie says, throughout history, it has been the inaction of those who could have acted, the indifference of those who should have known better, the silence of the voice of justice when it mattered most, that has made it possible for evil to triumph. So this is almost like what is our responsibility of learning this history and of becoming historical actors ourselves. And so Haile Selassie says, well, if we don't act, then we become complicit in the process, and we have no right to complain if we are not actors in our own society, right? Okay, and then Elie Wiesel says, I decided to devote my life to telling the story because I felt that having survived the Holocaust he's speaking about, I owe something to the dead, and anyone who does not remember betrays them again. And this is true for all of our histories, all of our ancestors. They've all contributed something, and if we don't remember them, we owe it to them to remember, right? And so that to me is the beauty of ethnic studies, is we remember these histories and we look at them and we remember our ancestors and our neighbors' ancestors. Okay, so now what I want you to do, turn to a partner, or maybe if you're like in a group of 3, kind of the configurations I think kind of make for nice conversation. So whoever's across from you, is talk about these 2 questions. We'll do like 60 to 90 seconds maybe. What are the most pressing problems in the society, in the world today? This is like a big existential question, right? It could be in your own personal life, some things that we face, or it could be like a big global national issue, right? And this is the question, what do you think maybe is wrong with society? In your own community, at your school, your home, your work, your parents' work, right? Just kind of what are some of the things that you noticed maybe that need to be addressed? We're going to come back to this, but I want us at first to at least identify what they are. Yeah? Okay. This is how my classes are. You got to talk. So we do a lot of time in the beginning of class, like getting comfortable with talking, with building community. By the end of the class, you will be up here giving this presentation, and my students are like, no way. There's no way I'm getting up there. And last semester, they were up here doing 60-minute presentations, but little by little, right? So we start here at the groups at the table, okay? And we can speak to our own experience because we know it, we live it, we see it, right? Okay, so we start there, and your experience is important in ethnic studies. We want to think about making connections to our own personal lives. Okay, so talk about this for 90 seconds, okay? Let's table those, and we'll come back to it. Can I get like 3 volunteers? Just give me a one-liner highlight or like a one word. What was the issue that y'all discussed back here? What did y'all talk about?
We talk about the environment around us, like drugs, immigration, refugees, people who leave their country to look for something good for their families. And sometimes we want to do something, but we don't start to do the first step to change the thing. And all begins in the families. And all begins with good leaders. That's it.
Good, thank you. Okay, how about this table? What did y'all talk about?
I feel like I don't want to discriminate. This is a free country, but I feel like we have to respect each country. And if you move to the United States, we should respect, we don't have to bring what you bring from your country. For me, it's very important to do that. And I feel like some people, they are still doing this, like they come, they don't want to get in line. That's in your country, but here, everybody get in line, so it's like a small.
Yeah, so we talk about all of these things, actually, in ethnic studies. We talk about immigration processes, how refugees are a different type of immigrant. We study these social processes, and then what happens when folks get here. We go into all of that, for sure. And we have pretty heated discussions sometimes because not everybody agrees with how we understand it or what we should do about it, right? But in a way, our classes are a way to practice having these discussions because these are difficult topics. I mean, you're not going to be around the dinner table. Hey, son, what do you think about the refugee crisis? I mean, these are like heavy. I mean, unless you're living it, then maybe you do have to out of necessity, right? But it's a way to practice having these tough conversations.
I think it's very important when we think about that, not to stereotype or generalize, because not everyone is the same.
No, I didn't.
In different countries,
I
people are
didn't
different.
generalize.
Right,
No,
right.
no, no, I'm just
something.
saying, I'm saying to keep in mind that.
No, I'm not
But I agree
generalizing.
with you, some behaviors, like, they
Yeah, and we unpack these processes, right, and try to think about what are the different perspectives around the issue. And we also try to get to why do we think what we think? Where does it come from? Which is important. It's not something that we think about all the time. It's just what we believe. We believe what we believe, right? But to ask why, and do we want to keep believing that? What are the consequences of thinking a certain way? We unpack all that. So a lot of the work we do in ethnic studies is about society, but you have to look at yourself and your immediate, right? Like your family, how you were saying. A lot of it starts with the family. Did you have your hand up too?
We were talking about raising kids in the societies. This is the most difficult maybe thing to raise kids. So parents should be prepared before they have kids by maybe attending parenting classes or learning from the surrounded environment, and maybe to start with themselves by controlling and changing their behaviors and be prepared to raising kids.
Yeah, it's important to be introspective when you're raising kids. I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews and lots of baby cousins. And well, my family's super mixed, but like in families of color, like everybody raises everybody else, right? Whoever's there has the say, right? And the influence. So yeah, it's important to think about who are we becoming, and then how do we take our kids with us, right? Yeah, good. Okay, so let's keep moving. So how did folks do this in the 60s? There's a lot going on. Just like there's a lot going on now, and there's always been a lot going on, right? But we study particular time periods to think about what are the approaches, how did people think about their society during this time period. So there's a bunch of images here. Does anybody recognize any of the images? Or what do you know about the 1960s in the United States? You might not have been here. You might have been, I wasn't born yet, but I've studied it. Women's movement, yep. Black Panthers, yep. What else? Anything else you recognize? It's kind of hard to see. So here on the bottom left, we have the Brown Berets, which were a Chicano organization that formed in East LA in the late 1960s. Actually, who were inspired by the Black Panthers, who we're going to talk about today. Okay. The middle image is participants of the American Indian movement. They took over Alcatraz Island in the San Francisco Bay Area. If you haven't heard of that, that's really interesting. Take ethnic studies, you'll learn more. Okay, and then a couple of these are actual protest movements. So the one at the bottom on the right are students who walked out of San Francisco State University demanding ethnic studies because they did not have a diverse, multicultural, social justice-oriented curriculum. It was just business as usual, learning history from the dominant perspective, and people didn't see themselves reflected in the books that they were reading. So they had to demand it. Nobody asked. They demanded to have a more culturally relevant curriculum. And that's why I have a job today, because these folks walked out of the classroom. They went on hunger strikes, and they demanded ethnic studies and all of the variations. So African American studies, Asian American studies, Native American, because people were brave enough to speak out. Okay, so the Black Panthers. What do you all know about the Black Panthers? Lots of misinformation that circulates around the Black Panthers and who they were and are. They're still active in some areas. What do you all know about the Black Panthers? It's a movie. Yes, that's not singular or not plural, right? But that's an homage to this group in the 60s. Yeah, if you have not seen Black Panther, the movie, you should see it. This is something else, though. What do you all know of the 1960s version?
They defend the rights about African Americans because at that time they don't have many rights that they want to have it.
Yeah, so defense of rights, and this idea of defense is would come up a lot. Yeah, and they were formed in the mid-60s, 1966 to be exact. Does anybody know where, if you looked at your document? Where? Oakland. Yeah, California. Do y'all know they formed in California? A lot of people don't know that. Yeah, and so we think about the civil rights or power movements, maybe if you've studied it, as only being in the South. This is not the case. Things were going on in California as well. A lot of times we think of California as this like utopia and everybody gets along, and was not the case, right? Yeah, so they were created in 1966 by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, two leaders in the community. And one of the things that they did was they were understanding their situation because they lived it, and so they knew what they needed. One of the things that they experienced was poverty, police brutality, hunger, lack of education. Very similar things that I've heard a lot of you talking about, right? Similar issues. So the struggles for rights, for justice is ongoing. It didn't start in the 60s either. It's been an ongoing process really since the founding of our country and even before that. But these are folks who got together and realized that they had some things that they needed to demand because they weren't getting it from the state, from the government, right? And if you're not getting what you need, then you ask. And if you ask and you're still not being paid attention to, then you demand. And so this was the process. So if you look on your document, the Black Panthers were really smart in that they put out this platform, this plan, so folks could know what they were all about to recruit folks into their organization. And so this was a part of a newspaper that would go out, and this was published, the 10-point plan was published, and people all across the US and eventually across the world were reading this Black Panther newspaper to really understand what they were about because people could connect to it. And yes, they started out as thinking about rights for Black Americans, but also thinking about, well, what do we have in common with Chicanos, with Asian Americans and Native Americans, with poor whites? A lot of people don't know that the Black Panthers actually organized with many groups, many ethnic and racial groups, including white folks. Racism. Do we have it today? Yes. And some people will dispute that. And if you feel it, come to me and I will give you numbers to back up your feelings. Because a lot of times people are like, no, we're a new society, right? Everything's all good. Actually, not so fun fact, we're more segregated today than we were in 1968. Did y'all know that? More segregated, actually. In housing, education, dropout rates, imprisonment. But we want to think that we've come so far. In a lot of ways we have, right? Definitely have a lot of gains. We talk about those too. But we have not arrived. The problem is when we think we've arrived, we stop working for justice. Right? Folks in power know this. We talk about that. I don't want to, this is a whole conversation. What else? Somebody back here have their hand up?
No, I was saying it's different kinds of races.
Oh, yes.
It can be cultural,
Yes.
color, religion.
Yes.
ignorance.
And that's the thing, right? There's a lot of terms that kind of float in the universe among your friends or in the media. We just hear racism, but it's complicated. It comes in different forms. It's changed over time. It doesn't look like today what it did back then. There's some similarities, right? People say history repeats itself. And I always say history never stopped, just transforms, right? We talk about all that stuff. Okay, good. So I'm gonna move us forward. If we were in class, what I would have you all do in groups is come up with your own 10-point plan. What's important to you, and this is maybe something to think about, and you can do later, like on the back of your sheets, or come take a class with us. But we talk about what would be your 10-point plan. Is there anything that you would take from the Panther platform? A lot of my students think education is really important. Obviously, they're students, right? They're committed to education. What would it look like? Employment, for sure, right? Yeah, so thinking about what do you want? And sometimes it's not just for you, it's for your family, it's for your community, and maybe your society too, right? So we think about what would be your 10-point plan, and then putting that plan to action. How can we start to realize that? So because of time, this is also a lifelong project. really, right, what we're talking about. But just something to think about to kind of give you some insight into what we do in our classes. And if you flip to the other pages, you can see other 10-point plans from other organizations who were inspired by the Black Panthers, including students who walked out of area high schools in East LA in 1968 demanding education in the high school system. Also the Brown Berets, who were that Chicano organization who I talked about a little bit earlier, they created their own 10-point plan. And then the last one is the Young Lords platform, and they were Puerto Ricans from New York. Okay, so lots of folks who are taking what the Black Panthers did and adapted it to their own communities. Okay, so why Fullerton College, why ethnic studies? Because we examine history, culture, and society from the perspective of people of color and all people who are invested in justice. So you don't have to be a person of color to take our courses, but you definitely will get much more out of it if you're invested in improving society. Because your experiences and your opinions are important. A lot of times when you take classes, especially like in English classes, they teach you not to use the I when you're writing an essay. You use I in our classes. Probably more than anything, right? Because we got to be introspective and think about how we're connected to folks sitting in the classroom with you, to people in our society. We uncover stories that have not been taught in K through 12. So if you just think back to your education, or maybe your kids look through their textbooks, probably won't see too much diversity there. Still, even today. We also have academically rigorous and culturally relevant curriculum. So some folks say, oh, ethnic studies, take that class because it's easy, it's about culture. We are pretty academically rigorous. You're going to learn critical thinking, introspection, you're going to write a lot, you're going to read a lot, you're going to learn how to give presentations, lots of transferable skills. We care about improving individuals' lives and society. This is a political commitment that we dedicate ourselves to. It's not just, I'm going to go theorize about society, but we're actually going to do something about it. Which I think somebody mentioned back here, right? It was like, okay, we know all these things, but like, now what? It's the now what question. What do I do, right? We're going to talk about what can we do? So we work with community organizations and groups. So if you're interested in getting involved in volunteering, getting an internship, we program events like Day of the Dead, Kwanzaa, Social Justice Summit, hip-hop concerts, really whatever students want, we are down to do it. We take field trips to museums and to cultural sites, and then we take longer trips, weekend trips, or spring break to places like the Empowering Women of Color Conference. I just took a group of 10 students, fully paid, to UC Berkeley. It was amazing. Changed my life, actually. My career is going like a different direction because of it. Native American reservations, we do some humanitarian relief, and then next summer I'm taking a group to Japan. So if you want to come to Japan, talk to me. Yeah, we do all kinds of amazing things on our campus. Okay, so 2 things I want to invite you to just real quick to end. So there's a flyer here on the left of I mentioned the students walked out of their classrooms in 1968 demanding multicultural content. They also demanded to not be hit for speaking Spanish in schools, because that was happening. Lots of other things that they demanded. Well, one of the original activists is coming to Fullerton College on Thursday the 3rd at 6 o'clock in our student center, and is going to give a talk. We're going to bring all of our ethnic studies students, but like most of our events, they're open to the community. It's all ages, intergenerational, so if you want to come, please come. Bring your friends, your family, your kids, your abuelos, anybody. So that's on Thursday. And then I'm going to give you our social media if you want to check the flyer, and then take a class with us. Try us out in the summer. We're offering 4 classes: Ethnic Studies 101, African American History, Intro to Chicano Studies, and Chicano History. So it's pretty diverse. We would love to have you this summer. June 11th to July 11th. Free. No. Well, if you qualify for the fee waiver, then they would be. And we do try to make our books, actually we're aware most of our students are working class, they have a lot of financial obligations, so we try to keep our books really reasonably priced. Yes. Okay, so take some classes with us. Questions? Preguntas. I speak Spanglish. Yes.
What happens if you don't agree on some of the points?
Oh, all the time. All the time. And it's not about agreeing, because I think, our whole lives as students, we're taught you just listen to the teacher and you regurgitate what they say, and I'm going to memorize it to take the test. We encourage open discussion and disagreement, because that's how society works. But we talk a lot about how are we going to engage in conversation? What is respectful conversation? We create community agreements. And we help each other to facilitate, really what we're also trying to do is build healthy ways of engaging in really controversial topics. What are some communication tips that you can really use anywhere? So you don't do well by agreeing. You do well by being introspective and thinking critically, for sure. At least in my class. I can't speak to other professors, but I would hope my colleagues, but I think disagreement is kind of how the world works, right? We have to learn how to find common ground.
And respect each other.
And respect each other, yeah. Because we stop listening when we disagree, right? Especially when somebody tells you to do something you don't want to do, right? Yeah. Other questions? Okay, so this is how you get a hold of us. So the Ethnic Studies Department email, our website, we're on Facebook, Instagram, FC Ethnic Studies. I post all of our events and things that we have going on. And then, it's a little dark, you can't really see it. My email is just A Gonzalez with two Z's in the middle and the end. You're like, where do they go? Full call. And then my phone number is there. Please call me. I'm better at being reached by, well, actually in person, but email. But you can call me, you can leave me a message, you can send me an email. I'm more than happy to answer any questions about our classes, about the trip to Japan, about our events that we do, and how you can get involved, and I hope to see you all soon. And congratulations for being here and making it this far. Yeah? Okay, have a good one.